Welcome once again, story lovers, for another step on our journey. Please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and taking a look at my shorts. These actions make all the difference as to whether a small channel like mine is able to continue, and I have many more tales to tell. Chapter 21. The ravaging plague raked through the ramshackle camp, causing the inhabitants to plead with the authorities for help. Their response was to build a fence and claim the captivity they'd imposed was from caring and kindness and was an essential action to save lives. When provisions of food, water, and medicines became scarce, the authorities explained in soft, noble words that they were doing everything in their power to meet the needs of the suffering masses. They remained blind to the implications of their neglect, and continually claimed that imprisonment was designed to avoid the carnage. Dara thought the frontline services were trying to do their best, and believed the evil in their good intentions was from the government, which viewed them as scum on the surface of beautiful waters. They were cornered, trapped, and considered an inferior life form. Dara knew death visited at night. That's when it had taken his wife. And now it was violating and consuming his young daughters. God, we don't deserve this. I've tried to. To write my whole life. How long will the torturous exhaustion of broken sleep continue? Dara considered as he brushed away fresh tears teetering on his sharply chiselled cheekbones. There was no confronting his fears. Speaking his sorrows aloud didn't reduce their potency, and all he considered writing down was a suicide note. Take the breath from my body, not theirs, he pleaded to the heavens. Daily, he'd come face to face with perishable lives and rotting corpses and survivors in states of desperate compassion. Now, the smell of death entered his tent and prompted him to repeat his request for an ambulance. He'd waited all day for news, only to be told the hospitals were full, but help would arrive in a day or two. Dara glanced over at the beds and saw the once-loved dolls had fallen from his daughter's limp arms. Prudy, his 7-year-old, was babbling nonsense through dry lips tinged with blue, and her eyes gleamed through partially opened lids. Attempting to blot out the thought that his reasons for living were being erased, he moved towards the beds to continue his nightly rituals. In the hope of reducing the purple rash and preventing blood clots, he sat his youngest daughter Lily upright, supported her back with pillows and moved and rubbed her limbs to keep the blood flowing, her body racked with pain, and her skin, which was as sensitive as a raw wound, caused her to wince and withdraw from his. Touched Dara patted the centre of her back to shift any congestion, and then carefully lay her on her front to ease her breathing. Lastly, he tenderly kissed her icy cheek. I love you, he whispered. Dara moved around to Prudy's bedside and repeated the process. The sight of her cracked lips prompted him to support her back and trickle water into her mouth, but she didn't swallow and it dribbled onto her chin. All the time, he clung to the unrealistic hope that he would once again see them running around and laughing with their friends. Dara flitted around the small space of the tent. He put a full kettle on to boil, hoping the steam would help kill the virus and aid their breathing. He struggled through every minute of every night, reassuring himself while he was awake that they would live, but he couldn't suppress his greatest fear of hearing silence. In the early hours, with every possible job completed, he sat on the dirt floor opposite their beds and watched and listened for a long time, taking in every changing detail. With tears, a mixture of sorrow and regret starting in his eyes, he slumped onto the floor and lay still, intending to take just a few minutes' rest. Later, he roused slightly. There was a peculiar sound of sandpaper rubbing against sandpaper. Through teary eyes, he saw a fuzzed-out image, but his drowsy brain barely registered the white cryptid creeping around the beds. Something lifted his arm, but it moulded into a dream of him washing in warm water. Squinting into the dull light, he saw the flash of a face and a lunatic grin, and then it was gone. Dara woke as he'd done every morning since the sickness had struck, with trepidation twisting in his gut. The first thing he noticed was blood dropping from Prudy's arm like petals onto the soil. He rose, rushed to her bedside, and examined the scratch marks on her inner arm. Both girls had been injured, and himself. He concluded they must have acquired a flea problem and been scratching in their sleep. When he looked over at Prudy's face, He didn't recognise her new, robust and healthy appearance. Thinking he was still dreaming, he squeezed his eyes shut and then released his lids. How can this be? He thought, and embraced his daughter. Prudy's eyelids fluttered open. Dara held back his tears and managed a smile. He wiped his wet face and began to fuss around, offering her drinks and food. Then Lily stirred, and he hurried to her side. He wrapped her in his arms. "This is the best day of my life," he exclaimed. Outside, the seagulls squawked as if they too were rejoicing. The night was as dead and cold as the desert, and now the morning bloomed. Dara had gained everything back and didn't know who to thank. As he prepared food to build the strength of his daughters, he listened to the singing and laughter coming from outside as others also recovered and celebrated the return of happiness to their lives. A week later, he watched his children playing a game, chuckling as they brushed each other's hair. The stiffness in their limbs had gone, and the scars were fading. One night, as the children slept soundly, he joined with some friends outside his tent. They discussed the well-intentioned genocide that had been inflicted upon them by the gentry and the rest of society, and how important it was to fight back and reclaim their lives from the chaos. "We're no longer sick, and businesses are crying out for workers," one man said. "We should arrange a safe place for our children and escape." The guards on the gates had become scarce as outside people succumbed to the sickness. On the following night, Dara joined with many other rioters who, with combined strength, charged at the weakest points in the prison fence. Along with many other brave souls, he breathed the fresh air of freedom. Thank you for listening to Chapter 21. All your interest and support are greatly appreciated. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. You can find all my books on your favourite online stores on Amazon and Audible. See you for the next episode in our journey.